this could be a good time for me to make my, okay, people who are watching, really, if you have, the most effective use of the color-coordinated shirts might be that coordinate your testimony and, have one person do one part of what you're thinking, another, and whittle it down to 4 or 5, and then just say, here, we all support what they're saying. Because we have right now 175 people.
Yeah, we're back to 175 for the first public hearing, somewhere around there, might be more now.
And, it's not just that it is a long time, but it's not really that effective for 150 people to say exactly the same thing. So we would really encourage.
We've been
people.
doing this hearing thing for a little while, too.
Yeah. Well, this is really for, the folks, because people will ask us, is the written testimony really as effective as being there? Yes, it is. Is the color-coordinated shirt thing effective? Well, yeah, it is. It's effective.
Ms. Valencourt, I don't mean to interrupt. We are running
Okay.
shy on time, but I applaud your hopes and
Yeah.
dreams on the
Yeah.
public.
The most
hearing.
effective.
All I'll say, but all I'll
would
say
be-
is that there are people in the community need to have their voices heard, and even if it's the same voice and the same message.
Yeah.
They're.
And they have that opportunity. They
and
also.
that was the intent
Yeah.
behind my question in looking at 2 public hearings, noting how many we've had, and that a lot of those same people and the issues they brought to us are really geared toward you all.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
So there's a term that is bandied about frequently, and I just want to make sure that I'm fully clear. Target utilization. Exactly what is that? What does it mean?
It's to the policy. Go ahead.
Okay, it's the range in which we would like to have our schools. It's a range between 90% capacity utilization and 110% capacity utilization. It's a range.
That's the target range.
That's the target range,
Directly in policy 62.
yes.
And why is it, you said 90 and 110?
90
Yeah.
to 110.
And why is it that?
For the policy?
I mean, could you just,
It has a long history. We have, wasn't expecting this question. The range in which is because it allows the schools the flexibility year to year to use their school however they need it. For example, one year you might need an extra kindergarten room and you don't need that extra 5th grade room. So that in theory changes their capacity and their number of seats. So 90 to 110 is kind of the accepted range to allow that flexibility, because you might say you're at 100% capacity, but you're using your rooms differently than whenever the building was rated. So hence the range.
And isn't it, well, I want to do one other thing, because we continue to talk about overcapacity, but that range is also to alert to undercapacity, because undercapacity causes excess cost,
Correct.
not the ability to not deliver necessarily a full curriculum, et cetera.
That's correct.
So if we look at the number we have currently out of capacity, it's about 35. Some are above and some
Right.
are below. And that's
Yeah.
critical what you just said.
Right.
And it allows for the floating that, sometimes sometimes, even in communities without development, to be going up and down and not, trying to
And we
change
can
that.
accommodate that. I mean,
Right.
a 10% either way, we can, if you take a 600 student or 500 student elementary school, that's 50 kids, and
Across
that's
several
20.
classrooms,
Yeah,
dozens of
spread out
classes.
over the whole school is manageable.
Ms. Trosser, did you have something?
I was just, it's a slightly different subject, but on socioeconomic status, if you could speak to what role that played in both the superintendent's proposal and will play in the boards.
Well, I know that the numbers for the socioeconomic changes are part of the presentation.
They're available.
Yeah.
But what role do they play
didn't-
in the
there are-
decision-making?
That's going to be part of what the board will be looking at very closely, because they didn't really move, that needle didn't really move. And there are a number of board members who find that very concerning. I know Dr. Martirano also finds it very concerning. And if we can find a way to make the needle move and balance out our populations a little bit better, I would be really interested in that conversation. I mean, you may not remember, but during the last redistricting for the middle school, a couple of us had developed a plan that would have balanced things out more, but it was rejected. And this board is very concerned about that, and it is, everything is on the table.
Okay. We're
I had one other question, but it wasn't related to socioeconomic status.
on redistricting.
It is related to redistricting, and what I was going to say is that, just to circle back around to that program, if you could provide us with a little bit more information about the program for high schoolers. And I was especially, I don't know if I want to say concerned, but when you're talking about, are these different classes that are available already in the high school? So if we're doing math, for example, how would that apply if you're doing something, if you're trying to meet people at all levels? Like, I can understand if you're offering a math that it's too high for what we're offering, but what are the types of classes? So if that's information you can provide.
So absolutely, we'll come back at a later time. We are developing all the frequently asked questions. We're having informational meetings in high schools. We're beginning to socialize this, but not every detail is figured out based upon budgetary issues that we're developing. At the same time, transportation we're looking at, program capacity, agreements with Howard Community College.
I think Mr. Ross was just asking about the program as it exists today, just a sense.
Well, yeah, but also and
What,
how
the
it's
early
going to.
college?
Yeah, the jump start.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
so-
early college.
All right,
We'll get all
and-
that to you as we continue.
And, just, this may be a compliment to you all, but in my experience, those college classes aren't always superior to ours. And so we had that experience with physics too. So I just want to,
Okay.
that's an applaud to you guys for a very high-quality education, but it's not always automatically better because it's at a community college. You're
We're
pretty
trying to move
good.
on with time. I can talk to you about this forever, but the bottom line is I'm
No,
trying
you
to
can't.
increase the certification of our current teachers as well in offering them in the high school. So there's
Right.
a lot of issues.
Okay, yeah, and so I'll take chair's privilege here and just to provide a last comment on the redistricting. And in the conversation I think I had with you, Dr. Martirano, in one or another meeting, and that is if once this process is complete, if a real formal and maybe community-engaged review of how this process worked and opportunities for improving it in the future.
That's part of the process.
Great, excellent, and so if we can make sure we communicate that clearly to folks and get the engagement, that I think there are a lot of folks out there who would love to be able to be more and more effectively engaged in the community on this process. So,
And I think that's critical. I mean, I know we all do that at the end of processes, and especially like we have the general plan or comp zoning or redistricting. But since we're looking at potentially doing this again so soon, we really need to kind of ramp things up and improve the processes so that we're much better at it in a year or two when we start having this conversation again.
So colleagues, what I'd like to offer is, we have APFO is the last item on our agenda. We have 7 minutes left, and you know how efficient we are at our APFO conversations. But we also have 11 o'clock is our APFO work session. If I could offer that, perhaps we engage our colleagues here for 15 or 20 minutes, go a little bit beyond our 10:30, stop no later than 10:45, so we can take a break and then prep for our work session. I will say I did offer a set time for the police chief and the fire chief to be here first, since they have been at every other work session and have not yet participated. So we want to give them the opportunity to come in and go and get back to their day. So if we're okay with that, just going on another 22 minutes.
Just for clarification, so if we were going to talk with the school about something that had to do with AFO, we do it as part of this, or they would?
We can do it
talking
now
to
as part
us?
of our current agenda item, and then if they're able to stay and we can pick back up with them at some time, I can't give a time certain, but today, you're certainly welcome to participate.
You all received our letter?
Which letter?
It's from yesterday about APFO?
I received it, did not read it. So do you want to start there?
Well, that pretty much sums it up.
Okay, well, you
thank
could have been. Can we have like a little study hall period for a second while we all look at our notes before
Absolutely.
we take the test?
It's your meeting.
Where's this letter? Who's it from? How did it come in?
It's from me.
Sent yesterday, and
At what time?
look in the back of your book if your staff could.
It's all the way in. It's the last thing in my book.
It was forwarded to all of your emails by Kim Claire and to your
I had nothing
administrator.
for AFO.
Yeah, Calvin has it. You want one? Somebody, oh, okay, great. Mr. Blum, maybe he should be up in case a question comes. Sorry. You gave us homework, you gave us a due date. We did it.
And Mr. Cook, Misters Cook and Glendenning, have you gotten these letters?
Oh, gee.
Have you, Mr. Glendenning? Okay. I just want to make sure you two are also reading it at the same time, because they'll probably be legal and budget
so
questions.
On this particular point, colleagues, if we can maybe leave this to a later conversation, because I think let the lawyers look at it. My quick read is,
Agree with that.
yeah, my quick read on it is that we probably still have the same issues that we had when we brought these issues before. Yeah, I think it's just the general flow of the request. So,
So,
yeah,
so
I think,
then-
yeah.
So we're going to talk about it later? Is that? 'cause
Yeah, I mean,
I'm
let the
unclear.
lawyers and,
Okay.
I mean, if there are other questions while our lawyer's looking at it right this
So
moment.
my recollection was this is about the funding issue
Right.
that the lawyers had concerns about. I think there were other questions related to the percentage of school capacity versus region. Why? Because I thought we were talking about some of the language, whether or not it was the school or the region. Was it 100%? Why was it 100%? How did that align with what you all were doing? I think there were lots of
Right,
other
that was, I
questions.
think you're
other
right,
than
Dr.
just
Miller. There's two
this.
parts of that. The one was this funding thing, the other was the
Right.
percent capacity, and it's something that I think you asked, or if I can't remember, just a little while
Well, I
ago.
think it came out.
Well, but there
when
was,
we were-
just earlier today, the 90 to 100%.
Oh, that's right, yes.
Yeah, and 10. Right, and so how does that relate? I think that's the other part of it,
Yeah,
right,
it's
is
a
how
good
does,
question. And,
you know,
and
if
Dr.
110%
Moderano, you
is
weren't
the-
able to make our last
no, he was
AFO
here.
funness.
No, unfortunately, he was here, and he had to leave.
Yes, so
because we
now
didn't
you're
get to him.
here for all the fun.
Well, because you hadn't weighed in, I think it'd be, I mean, if you have a sense of, or can comment on that range relative to setting a number different than that range, that's,
My comments are very clear. That one, the information I think that Ms. Valancourt has communicated in the letter speak for themselves regarding the funding, and that's my biggest issue in terms of the triggers for the funding to support it. The board has been very clear about their 100% recommendation of where they feel that needs to be, and then the communication, I think, needs to continue with the board regarding that particular topic at this moment.
So what do you mean by 100%? Because that was unclear our last conversation. What does 100% mean to you?
Okay, the 100% is related to the school region. Open means that the projected enrollment of a school region is below 100%. It currently sits at 115% in the existing language. And elementary school, open means that the projected enrollment of the elementary school is below 100% of the program capacity of the school. Again, it currently sits at 115%. And for middle school, open means that the projected enrollment of the middle school is below 100% of the program capacity of the school. Currently, again, sits at 115%. And we are adding the high school test so that we add a new section of open means that the projected enrollment of the high school is below 100% of the program capacity of the school.
suggesting below 100%, that
We're just
AFO
replacing your 115 with the 100.
So you've just told us that your policy from 90 to 110 allows for allows the building to breathe, right, and accommodates growth or growing and shrinking in any neighborhood at any school. So that's what you've told us, that's what you operate with. But now what you're asking us to do is to set an APFO level that is at 100%, even though your policy recognizes that you can function very reasonably up to 110%.
Well, I think the challenge has been that if you look at the fact that we do have this utilization range obviously it's not. There still is obviously a problem because we have overcapacity within the system. And the challenge is that when there is this additional growth, we don't have the time. We don't have a stop, because keep in mind, although we're just talking about numbers right now, this is a finite period of time. Children are still coming. Development is still happening. We are still getting bodies into our school. And yes, we have to be able to have some capacity within our school, within our internal day-to-day, year-to-year mechanics. But that is being impacted by what is happening county-wide with the development coming. Because we don't have this pause and we don't have this ability, we can't even catch up to where we need to be. Because I believe it was Chairman Valencourt who looked at the numbers and said that if you look at the capacity that we currently have with high school students, that honestly, we could probably use 2 schools. But, that's not going to happen. We have the bodies for the seats. We just don't have the seats and the space for the students. And this is where we're looking for your help, is that we need to continue to work together to figure out how we provide the education in Howard County that not only as elected officials we expect and we want, but that our community wants and expects by being members of the Howard County community.
So if I could jump in, and the numbers you read before, is that a slight change from what we had previously? Or is that what you're saying? Okay. I just want to make sure.
The important
I don't
thing
have
is
one.
that it's.
Uncle, I think Mr. Fox.
Yeah, so, and I understand, where you're coming from, because there's really, there's sort of 3 different situations, like you said. There's the issue of the year to year and how you're operating, on that basis. There's the issue of APFO, and then there's the issue of planning for funding. And so, and then from there, we sort of need to have discussions probably really around, each of those 3. And then including, like, as you're looking at your letter, and again, we haven't heard from the lawyers, but I would think some of that, potentially is, might be a concern. But going back to what I had said at our last meeting, why wouldn't you just have that in your policy that you guys, when that happens, that you're making that request in your budget, and then it automatically becomes a discussion? And if we, wanted to then, as a council, if we decided to trigger some sort of public hearing or whatever on something, we could potentially do that. But I'm not exactly sure about this, the method of where that starts. Because if that's something that's a concern, you guys put it in your own policy, it starts with you anyway.
Right, it does start with us, but again, as I pointed out, the growth and the APFO side is another calculus that's coming into the process. And yes, I think the challenge is, and speaking as respectfully as I can, with decisions of those who previously sat in the seat I am currently sitting in, I think that the previous boards could have been much more proactive in coming to you and asking for the funding. Water under the bridge, but here we are today. You have a board with a very different philosophy. I would hope that you have in front of you a board that is taking their fiduciary duty very responsibly, and that we have an administration.
Well, it's-
And, we are moving towards, we're trying to fix the challenges of the past, and that's really what we're looking forward to
Right,
do.
and it's a really good point, and I'm glad you raised it. I think that the issue is not only previous boards coming and asking for funding, but also taking on the responsibility of managing capacity across the system in an efficient way. And I've only been here for 3 years, and I haven't really looked back and was only part of one redistricting as a family. But there seem to have been other opportunities and points of need to go through that process. So my concern generally about making changes, perhaps the ones that you suggested, though I believe that changes are absolutely needed in line with what you're suggesting, is planning for the worst-case scenario and taking away the appropriate flexibility that's already existing in your policy, and trying to shift, I think, the responsibility is where the danger lies. We can't always count on the fact that this council or a council in the future will be as responsive to your funding requests, nor can we count on a future Board of Education being receptive to doing the hard work you're doing right now on redistricting. So we have a confluence right now of opportunity where we're both trying to achieve similar goals. So I think that's it. So I think you're on the right track. But I just think that there might be some more reasonableness in sort of the numbers. Sorry, I think I cut you off as you were about to say.
Well, no,
I'm
we-
going to.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
What I was going to point out, and I think it goes along with what Mr. Weinstein is saying, the open and closed chart that Apfo operates off of is generated by the school system. So it reflects the capacity of the school as it is currently delineated, and then it assigns a percentage either over or under capacity within a range. So already Apfo is determined by your open and closed chart, and then your open and closed chart is determined by the moves that you all make in relation to putting in the budget new schools when needed, which I believe the board has been doing and has done a really good job on for lots of years to meet growth. And it also, though, needs to take into account where schools are under capacity. And so I'm at a point where I'm troubled because we have schools that are significantly under capacity. And so with that under capacity, we are potentially getting in the way of the county being able to execute on its general plan. And so it's reasonable, and I think we saw from Mr. Brownow information that shows us that development is happening where mostly where schools are have capacity. And it's and you all prepare for us what it looks like going out. We depend on your numbers. You don't depend on our numbers, and our Apfo law your numbers are central to it in terms of what can then happen in different regions of the county. So I'm personally having a hard time with this concept of going to 100% when ultimately, at least the Apfo as it is currently, is dependent on your numbers. I mean, if we want to talk about going to 100%, maybe we talk about taking away the open and closed chart from you.
Well, I mean,
Because if we have to depend on the board, either not moving students, which is one of the things that Dr. Martirano is talking about now, and we could have schools where we could in fact have met some of these goals and therefore allowed for our general plan to be able to continue to be executed upon. But you made a choice not to. So it's an artificial choice, but it's a choice that you've made that controls what can happen. So you all actually control it. And so for me to look at this and have you now say, but we don't want to even have it be in line with our in our thinking and our policy, you wanted us to put it into county code. I'm having a little bit of a hard time understanding why that's a good plan.
I think the important thing here is when we're talking about 90 to 110% and not doing anything, that's because it's a stable, that would be in a situation where it's a stable neighborhood environment and it just has small fluctuations. We're talking in this about when the projections are that the school will exceed 110% by, in the near future. That's the difference. I mean, we understand that there is we can manage with some flexibility, but we're talking about here is if it's projected to go way out of whack.
Yeah, sure, okay.
We
Right,
need
but
to
that's-
know, we need to start our planning early, and we're,
No,
But I would
think
suggesting you all
No,
work on it early
Mr.
too.
Weinstein, but I would think that that's exactly what the open and closed chart does for you every single year when it's prepared and you send it to us. It is part, and then it becomes part of your feasibility study, and it becomes part of your capital program planning.
Except for that when it expires, for instance, the townhouses that are being built that are now, because they're 5 years out, have been cleared for building in the Ellicott Mills area.
That's not impacted by the percentages.
Right, that's not this
But
conversation.
Ellicott Mills was closed, to your point about
Yeah,
the
but
open
those
closed
numbers
chart.
are in your charts. I mean, the number, the yields of those developments are in your
But
projections.
Right, so-
if it were 105 or 110 or 115 or 100, if it were closed, the time period would still be the time period.
Right, and you guys would have already had that school, discussion, either a redistricting or a school discussion in your budget, that you were putting in your capital planning budget. And I guess that's going back to, this letter that we received yesterday. I mean, you guys have that opportunity to do that immediately. That's the process. And then we have a public hearing on your capital budget. So we almost, don't even need to really, I talked about maybe calling a special one, but it's already part of the process. It's going to be something anyway. So this isn't a percentage discussion process one. I'm just trying to understand, we want to help you make things better, but I'm trying to understand this particular request.
Yeah, if I can pull out, one of the things, the timing seems to be a primary driver. I mean, what you just said, you said it earlier, right? And so that's an element that certainly can be considered. And then just knowing that AFO, obviously, it's a comprehensive set of rules and regulations. Thank you. So looking at all those things may still achieve the same end result, right? To either slow development or to give you more time to address the concerns about the schools, while we also address concerns about roads and other infrastructure types of things. So it is a balancing act that we're trying to achieve, and trying to figure out from what you're trying to achieve, how we can integrate that into what we're trying to do with the amendments we're working on right now.
And maybe we're talking about a lot of topics and issues that the public may not fully comprehend. Is there someone in the room who's really good about the process from open and closed chart till Mr. or Mrs. Developer, you can't build right now? Like, who does the open and closed chart? What does that mean? What does it mean when a school is closed?
Right, because.
Anybody in the room?
Ms. Kamin's let out a sigh of excitement. And we do have, yes, ma'am.
May I recommend, in the interest of time, I think
Yeah.
Ms.
Can we-
Kamen can certainly speak to some of that, but it may be
Can we
a fuller
s- yeah,
conversation
can we
if we
start?
had it when Mr. Bronow was here as
Yeah.
well.
So can we?
that
So we can do it
Is that
during the
gonna be
ample
today?
At our
conversation.
deadline.
I just was thinking,
And
like,
can you
timeline,
come
who
back
does
in
what
Yeah,
when?
because
a little
so the
bit,
public
like
can follow what.
45 minutes to an hour.
I can say,
Well, I'm sorry, no, actually,
Okay.
before you even start, I don't
Okay,
want to
yeah,
enter the
that's fine.
conversation, so what I'm thinking, thank you very much, Ms. Fellmark, we are, as Mr. Fox whispered in my ear, we're down to 2 minutes, that we will pick back up immediately after, colleagues, if you're okay, immediately after with this particular question, as soon as the chiefs have had their piece and we've asked them our questions. Is that
good idea.
okay? And Mr. Brown is expected to be here along with others. And then again, our goal is to go through the remaining elements of the APFO topics. So, Ms. Siggety? Yeah. So, colleagues, just hold on for 1 second.
And
Sorry, Ms.
hopefully, Ms. Kamen and others from the school system can continue to be with us to help us
Yeah,
through some of
Please
this.
continue to join the fun.
Dr. Martirano, you're welcome to stay as long as you'd like, though I'm sure you probably have a full day. And so as we wrap up this part, well, I mean, thank you very much, very constructive conversation. I think we're kind of we're on a run of very effective and constructive meetings. We are starting in 15 minutes, and the first people we're talking to are Chief Butler and Chief Gardner, and then after that, we'll pick up with a conversation that Ms. Kamen, since you're welcome, about 45 minutes, maybe an hour.